This is a Willets Point Shea Stadium bound 7 express train. The next and last stop is Willets Point. This is a Willets Point Shea Stadium bound 7 express train. The next and last stop is Willets Point Shea Stadium.
Oh, yes, it is the Subway to Shea podcast. Anthony Rivera here with you, talking about all the news and happenings surrounding that team from Queens, the New York Mets. It's episode 226 from the Subway to Shea studios in my office. If you're not doing so already, you like what I put out there for you, please make sure you are following Subway to Shea on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Subway to Shea. You can follow me personally on X at Ant Rivera 86, and you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify if you prefer to listen. But if you want to be a part of the chat, you want to be a part of the conversation, you're doing that right here on YouTube. You can do it on X as well, but I prefer everybody be on YouTube. I think that's where we get most of the chat going. We got 88 people in the room already. It is 11:30 in the evening, and do we have a lot to talk about tonight? I feel like we definitely have so much to talk about with these New York Mets, and that's not great news. I'll say that. But let's shout out to people in the chat here. Shout out to my guy Carlos Ramos. Yeah, a little late night Ant with Subway to Shea here. Appreciate you guys for being a part of this. Andre Manassian also in the chat. Appreciate you. Jeff Cohen, appreciate you for being a part of the chat. I hope to see you, Jeff, at the QBC on Saturday. I'll be a part of the State of the Mets panel with Mark Healy, Dan Bartles, Lori Rubinson, and Ibby from Till Mets Do His Part as well will be a part of the panel, and he's going to have his own podcast with John Saponaro a little later on in the evening, so you can check that out as well. But appreciate everyone for being here. Maureen, thank you so much for being here. Nice to have the crew here on a late night talking New York Mets. Rosie K, Frankie Diaz, Peter. Oh, boy, a lot to talk about today. Let's get right into it because it was not a great day for the New York Mets at the winter meetings. And I kind of compare this to probably the day that we lost Jose Reyes. I think that was a little worse than what happened today, but kind of in comparison, we haven't had a really terrible day at the winter meetings since, I feel like, that day. And right off the bat here, let's pull no punches. Edwin Diaz is now a Los Angeles Dodger, and I know everyone is upset about the whole situation of what went down here with Edwin Diaz signing with these Dodgers. 3 years, $69 million, a $23 million AAV, new record for a reliever, which tops the deal that Diaz made with the Mets when he was $102.5 million. For that 5-year deal. He opted out, and that's why he's signing with the Los Angeles Dodgers here. Joel Sherman of the New York Post said that the deferrals on Diaz's deal with the Dodgers is $4.5 million annually for the 3 years, and for luxury tax purposes will calculate at roughly $21.1 million. And the Dodgers may not even be done yet. I'm hearing that they're still in on Robert Suarez. This is a guy that the Mets should be in on right now. They got Tanner Scott still. I know he had a rough year last season, but, you know, Tanner Scott has been a good reliever for a while now, and we know that relievers can be up and down. So the bullpen right now for the Dodgers is looking quite good, especially with Edwin Diaz now leading the charge there in a team that has already won back-to-back championships. They now have the best closer in all of baseball. Anthony DiComo of MLB.com saying the Mets offered Edwin Diaz 3 years and $66 million with slight deferrals and indicated that they have some room to improve that figure. Now, here's where things get interesting. And Andy Martino of SNY said the Mets didn't even get a chance to counter this. This is a direct quote from him. They would have loved to know they didn't draw their line in the sand because they didn't have the chance. The Mets bid on Diaz, the numbers that you guys have already talked about, which we just mentioned right now. But they made it very clear to Diaz's camp that there was a little bit more. So let's talk again. Then they found out that Diaz was a Dodger. the sort of the conversation about if Steve Cohen wanted to make this happen, he would have. He didn't get the chance. They were in a bidding process and they didn't know it was over. So they didn't even get a chance to counter the deal here. And it was only a $3 million separation here. I think what frustrates a lot of Met fans here, and I'm going to get to the comments that you guys got in the chat. I appreciate you all for being in here once again. I know I say that a lot, but it really means a lot to be talking with you here tonight. And the thing that's frustrating is, one, he's a Los Angeles Dodger now. Very frustrating that this team continues to get richer and richer. And I don't blame them. It's not their fault. They did their due diligence. They're doing what it takes to be a championship team, and that's going to continue to happen year in and year out, just like the Yankees did in the late 90s. And all this talk about the Mets being the East Coast Dodgers, well, we're not kind of there yet, and it feels like we're taking steps backwards instead of taking steps forward. Another interesting point that was made here, and this goes in line with what Andy Martino was talking about, and trying to figure out why didn't the Mets get a chance to counter offer this deal. Jeff Passan on SportsCenter said that, the split between Diaz and the Mets started when the pitcher did not get a call giving him a heads up about the decision to sign Devin Williams to a 3-year contract. So I guess he was not happy about not being told. And I want your thoughts here in the comments about this, because I posted that comment. It was from an article from Bleacher Report, but it was talking about Jeff Passan on ESPN. Do you think the Mets owed it to Edwin Diaz to tell him they were signing Devin Williams? I mean, he was a free agent, so I get both sides of the picture. I think both sides could be right here, right? The Mets, knowing that Edwin Diaz is an integral part of this team, a very important fixture of the Mets bullpen, the leader of the Mets bullpen, you think that they would kind of not even give him a heads up, just be like, hey, Devin Williams is signing with us. Don't worry, you're still our guy. Or because Edwin Diaz was a free agent, the Mets did not have to do that. So I want to know your thoughts in the comments, which I'm going to get to in just a few moments. Devin Williams deal, 3 years, $51 million from the Mets. The Dodgers deal for Diaz, 3 years, $69 million. That's the other thing. All this talk about the Mets not wanting to go to a 4th year, a 5th year, fine. I get it. I mean, I wouldn't want to give a reliever that much money either, and that many years. They already did that. They did that for Edwin Diaz. They did a lot for Edwin Diaz, including helping him in his recovery after that freak accident at the WBC. He was taken care of by Steve Cohen for an entire year. But this deal here, and Devin Williams was at the winter meetings, and Abby Mastreko of New York Daily News saying that Devin Williams said he expected to see Edwin Diaz return as a New York Met. So he seemed surprised, as everyone else did seem surprised, that Edwin Diaz is not with the Mets right now. So this situation, it's just a little crazy. So I want to get to some of your comments in the chat. I want you guys to answer that question for me. So throw everything out there. Carl Raymond was saying, not sure I have any rants left, and I kind of now accepting defeat. This is how it will be with Stearns. We've gone from having the deepest pockets in all of sports to shopping at the pawn shop. And he mentions this. I'm going to get to his comments after the whole Diaz fiasco. I'll get to that shortly. Andrew Manassian saying, hey, great podcast. I have to tell you, I have zero confidence in David Stearns. Absolutely zero. He better make big moves or he won't last long running this team because the stadium will be empty. Honestly, I don't think David Stearns is going anywhere. Even if the Mets fail this year, I don't think he's going anywhere. I think that, and I've mentioned this in the past, that this is a guy that Steve Cohen wanted for such a long time. You know how hard it was. We went from GM to GM to GM, and finally he gets his man in David Stearns. I think he's going to see this through at least for the tenure of this contract. I don't think he gets fired. I mean, look at how many people are calling for Brian Cashman. He gets that team to the playoffs. I know it's different, but their standards are different, I assume. So I don't think he gets fired. I think he stays at least the length of the contract. But I will say this, the honeymoon phase is over. This is David Stearns' mess to fix. The team got to the postseason in 2024, thanks in part to great leadership on that team from JD Martinez, Jose Iglesias, and what Francisco Lindor did in that second half of the season. Got unstoppable pitching in September and most of October. And then things spiraled out. They signed Soto, and things for some reason spiraled out of control. Now we're hearing about things in the clubhouse. I just want to see this team win. Is that hard to ask for? There's no doubt in my mind that David Stearns, from this point forward, this team cannot miss the playoffs. Cannot miss the playoffs moving forward. He said that this team is going to be a playoff contender every year, and he better make it one. I'm okay with what Steve Cohen said about winning the World Series in 5 years. I know how hard that is. But the point of making the postseason on a yearly basis has to be done. And it's unacceptable if it's not. And it's unacceptable to fail that the way the Mets failed last season from this collapse of, what was it, from June on? It was an epic collapse. Sorry, guys, I had to shut that light off. Epic collapse. Cannot have that. And let's be honest, they barely made the 2024 playoffs if it wasn't for, a miracle. Jeff Cohen in the chat saying, Diaz upset that Stearns didn't tell him about the Williams signing. Well, he's not on the roster and still knew that the team wanted him back. This is on Edwin. Sorry to see him go. That's been the sentiment, Jeff, of mostly everyone that I saw on X. There really has not been so much defense of Edwin Diaz here. Although I agree with you, but I also agree with what Carlos is saying here. And he just going back with this is, if you want your closer back, you communicate with him. Not communicating with Edwin is business malpractice. David Stearns is a huge problem. And now we have to wonder about Pete Alonso, and we'll get into him later. I am not feeling great. How can you? What have we seen that would make us feel better? Andrew saying Stearns better be making moves. Sick and tired of the constant smirks on his face. The dude is always smiling. Sometimes it bothers me, but what are you going to do? He's got to play the cards. He's talking to a whole bunch of media. The only time I saw him look, frustrated and upset was that end of the season presser. Maureen saying, if they don't sign Alonso, a lot of the fans will abandon ship. Are you meaning for this season or like just forever? I assume you're just meaning for this season. It'd be hard to just abandon ship when you probably could have done that so many times in the past with all the bad decision makings that the Mets have been making. That's the thing. The talent evaluation needs to get better. I don't mind this team spending money. And Steve Cohen doesn't either. But bring in good talent. Don't bring me Frankie Montas for $37 million. Ever again. Jeff Cohen saying tomorrow, sign Alonso tomorrow for 5 years and 155 to 160 million. Get it done. It's the years. They don't even want to go to 3 to 4 years. with Pete Alonso. And I'll get to that shortly. We're gonna get to Pete shortly. Because I have a you guys know I'm very positive. I've kind of, been a proponent of David Stearns. And honestly, I don't feel great today. I don't feel positive about what's happening. Rosie K saying, it's odd that the Mets weren't in close contact with Diaz throughout the offseason. Seems like Diaz should have been the priority, and failing to make it so was a huge miscalculation and malpractice. Rosie K, I know you've been watching Subway to Shea for a while now. I said it from the start, even more than Pete Alonso, that Edwin Diaz was the priority of this offseason. You go all the way back to the 2024 playoffs, this bullpen was awful. Awful. Edwin Diaz wasn't great. He was still coming back from his injury, so he had his grace period. The rest of the bullpen was awful. And what does Stearns do? He brings most of those guys back and then does this whole taxi cab, optionable relievers instead of bringing in legitimate relievers outside of maybe AJ Minter, who got hurt. Thank goodness he re-signed Brooks Raley. Otherwise, that would have been a mess. Edwin Diaz was the priority this offseason. And I was a little worried to say that because I know a lot of fans wanted to see new free agents and new blood come in here. But bringing back Edwin Diaz, the best closer in baseball, you look at the rest of the relief crop, and it's a significant downgrade. Raisel Iglesias, who's now 36 years old, going to Atlanta. Ryan Helsley, 31. We saw him enough. 2-year deal with Baltimore. So, yeah, I mean, they had to bring Diaz back to me. Even with Devin Williams, I felt like they needed him. And then another loss for the Mets. Tommy Tanis, thanks for bringing this up. I forgot to put this on my rundown. But he was running scouting for the Mets since 2011, and now he will be the assistant GM for the Rockies. I don't know how that's going to go for them, but he brought in and helped drafted a lot of these players. Shout out G Money Stacks. He says it's the biggest mistake letting Edwin Diaz walk to Los Angeles. I agree with you. Peter saying, I hate when Stern talks about building a World Series team when he doesn't know how. It's kind of hard, right? He could build a postseason team, right? He did that in Milwaukee. And you know what's interesting? Last night, I don't know if you caught this, but there was talks about the Mets having interest in Tyler McGill's brother, the closer from Milwaukee. And when I saw that, I was like, that's a little concerning to me about Edwin Diaz. It feels like he wants to bring everyone over from Milwaukee. Except we don't need all those players. Because that team is not a World Series team either. Shout out to Matt Talks Rangers. Appreciate you for being a part of the show. Maureen saying Diaz did not want to be a Met. Probably after all that went down and what we just talked about, he probably didn't. He felt slighted. And also, let's be honest. You have the opportunity to sign a contract with the Mets or with the Dodgers in this current state. Who are you going to? I might even go to the Dodgers. They're a winning team. Not only do they make the playoffs every year now, they've been to about 4 or 5 World Series and have won 3 of them. The Mets can only make it to the postseason every other year, and sometimes even less. In the Cohen era, it's been every other year. And also in the Cohen era, there's been epic collapses. I don't want another apology letter at the end of the season. I want this team in the playoffs with an opportunity. Look how fun 2024 was. I want that back. Rosie K saying, after last season's embarrassing collapse, this is yet another embarrassment for Stearns, and the Mets don't have any confidence in Stearns or Mendoza for the fact of the matter. A lot of people agree with you, Rosie K. I'm still trying to hold out hope. I know it's hard to do that. But what else do I got? Obviously, I could watch other sports and hone in on hockey, which is one of my favorite sports, and I love tennis. I could watch something else, but I love baseball. And I want to see this team succeed. I want to see a championship. I've never seen one. I literally was born 2 weeks after this team won the 86 World Championship. And even if I was born then, I wouldn't have been able to enjoy it. Ethank saying, this is a huge bad look for the franchise as a whole. It's a bad day. An absolute bad day for the Mets. Vizzy saying, people thought I was crazy when I said I'm friends with the nanny for the Diaz family, Lala, as she told me he was going to the Dodgers. Was that in this chat you said that, Vizzy, or someone else's chat? Because I remember seeing that. So I may have been watching someone else's podcast and just missed it, but if you said it here, I do remember that. Ethan saying, this is telling us that the culture with the Mets, the constant losing, drives guys away. I don't blame Edwin for wanting to dip. I would too if my time here is being wasted. But they had 5 years to do this, right? And they came up short. It's frustrating. Eddie Presti in the house here. Shout out to Eddie. I know you were doing your stream. I was watching with Hector a little bit earlier. He's a rebuilding Stearns, so frustrating, so disingenuous, so evasive, and most of all, non-transparent. Dark day to be a Mets fan. I'm glad you brought that up, because let's get into the comments that David Stearns made today. And I, just took this from the SNY feed earlier today. Obviously, he did not comment on the Edwin Diaz deal. He can't because it's not official yet. But he goes, I'm very optimistic about where our offseason is headed. We've got certainly work to do. Yeah, you do got a lot of work to do. A lot. You need 2 hitters. You need 2 batters, whether that's with Pete Alonso or not. One of those batters better be an outfielder, because you definitely need 2 outfielders. You need a top front end starting pitcher, and you could use more relief pitching. Yeah, you got a lot of work to do. He said, but there are a lot of good players out there, and I'm confident that we're really going to like where our team is once we get to opening day. Now, in regards with adding another high-end bullpen piece, I think we'll see. I think we're having plenty of conversations. I think there are different ways to build a bullpen, and we're going to continue to explore all of them. And that tells me is that he likes building this bullpen the way that he's been doing it, which is get these optionable taxi cab, those taxi cab relievers, bring them up and down instead of having an expensive piece, a legit relief pitcher in the bullpen. There's still an opportunity for this bullpen to be very good, even without Edwin Diaz. I know someone just came off the board today, which is Cal Finnegan. Right before I got on the show, he signed a 2-year, $20 million deal with, I think it is the Detroit Tigers. He is off the board. But there's still other people. Robert Suarez is available. And he has better stats than Edwin Diaz over the past couple of seasons. He's got more saves. The ERA is close. He has less strikeouts. But he walks a lot less batters, and his wins above replacement is almost a point higher than Edwin Diaz. Now, I'm not saying he's better than Edwin Diaz. Over the last couple of years, his stat line is a lot better. So you got Robert Suarez, who the Dodgers are in on. If the Dodgers are in on them, you should be in on them. Pete Fairbanks from the Tampa Bay Rays, he's available. And why not bring back Tyler Rogers? I love a guy with a different arm slot. I love the submarine look. He was decent for the Mets. And I think he could be a good addition to this team to give them a different look in the bullpen. Now, when he was asked if Devin Williams would be the Mets closer if the season started today, he said, yeah, and we're very comfortable with that. I've certainly seen Devin perform at a very high level for a long time, have full confidence that he can be one of the best relievers in baseball. I think he's a very motivated to do that, and I'm looking forward to watching that. I don't want, and I was okay with the signing. The signing to me is fine. It was a good deal. Obviously, you wanted Edwin Diaz back for him to be the setup man. You could do a whole lot worse at closer than having Devin Williams. And I know he had a terrible year last year with the Yankees. And as I said, I mean, like, he had a bad year. Couldn't have been worse than Edwin Diaz's 2019, and he bounced back from it. So we're going to hope that this guy bounces back from this with a year under his belt in New York. I don't want David Stearns to feel comfortable getting his guys. I want him to explore other players as well. Got to bring in some other guys here and not make this the New York Brewers. When David Stearns was asked how he approaches the Mets losing long-tenured popular players, and this is the one that gets to me with David Stearns. Everything else fine. I understand his whole spiel. I know he's got to say certain things, but this is the one that gets to me. When he was asked about losing long-tenured popular players with the fan base, he goes, that is something broadly that we talk about a lot. We have a lot of those conversations. We've had them throughout this offseason. We had them throughout last offseason as well when we were faced with some decision. It is a part of it. I've said this before. I can't tell you I know exactly how to weigh that. I think we do our best to weigh the full impact of any player on our team, on our organization, and we make the best decision we can. I honestly would rather David Stearns leave out the fan base element to this, because he honestly should not be basing his job and who he brings in and who he doesn't bring in on what we like and what we want. He's got to put his team together with all the work that he's done, with all the stats that he's found. It shouldn't be, oh, we love Pete Alonso, we got to bring him back now. If he doesn't feel that Pete Alonso's right for this team anymore, then we have to move on. But at least be honest about it. Don't say that you consider what the fan base is thinking and all, because you're not really doing that. You're just not. In regards to the situation with Steve Cohen and the money that he has, he goes, our resources that we have here are an enormous advantage. As long as we allocate these resources intelligently, they're going to continue to be an enormous advantage. I think Steve gives us everything we need to have not only a great roster, but a competitive organization in every single respect. I think our players and coaches recognize that. I have no doubt that we're going to continue to have the resources we need to compete at a very high level, which I believe. But the most important thing that he says in there is, as long as we allocate these resources intelligently. Moving forward, does David Stearns have it within him to allocate those resources intelligently? Because I'll tell you this, Frankie Montas was one of them. And a lot of other moves that he did. 2024 worked. He tried to do that again in 2025. It didn't work. So how is he going to change it up now? Obviously, getting rid of Brandon Nimmo and bringing in Simeon, bringing in Devin Williams and letting Edwin Diaz go. We'll see how the rest of this offseason shakes out. And, you know, I know a lot of fans went to Amazing Day last year, and I saw people asking about it. Whereas they're going to have amazing. They're not going to do amazing day this year. Do you think that David Stearns and Steve Cohen want to sit through another panel where they get berated by the fan base because they did not make any of the signings that they wanted? There's not going to be an amazing day. And if there is, they ain't doing a panel. That's for sure. Let me get to some of the comments here. We got 378 people. It's after midnight, folks, and you're hanging out with me. Appreciate that. Green Machine. What's up, my friend? Can't wait to see you. I know you're going to be at the QBC. Can't wait to see you, my friend. He goes, if the Mets knew there was wiggle room to offer Diaz more money, then why not just do that to begin with? It's always this negotiation tactic, and that's what they're going to tell you. It's the back and forth, right? And that's could be a good thing, but also could be a problem because David Stearns at the end of the season said, you know what, we were too reactive and not enough proactive. Kind of was like that with this signing here of letting Diaz go to the Dodgers. Very reactive and not enough being proactive. I haven't seen much proactive from David Stearns during this winter meetings. Carlos Ramos saying Sugar Diaz shouldn't have been made to go speak with LA. David Stearns should have made a legitimate offer to Diaz and just signed him back. It's on Stearns for lowballing another player. I get it. Sometimes if you want a player, you just have to get them and not play games. What was it? Play stupid games, win stupid prizes? Well, that's what happened here. Rosie K saying, can't be the East Coast Dodgers when the president of baseball operation operates the way that he does. We're basically going to be the Milwaukee Brewers. We are going to be the East Coast Milwaukee Brewers. That's where we're heading. Maureen thinks that players don't want to be here. I mean, we'll see. Let's hold on to that comment and see what happens at the end of this offseason before I start thinking about that. I wonder if whatever is happening in the clubhouse is affecting this team bringing in players. And the fact that Eric Chavez laughed on his Instagram about this whole situation is kind of telling. Is that not? Like, is he jilted just because he was fired? Does he know things that were going on? Like, I don't know. Vizzy saying, I'm told Lindor and the wife aren't liked by many, and the wife and Alex Cohen had drama over a WhatsApp group chat. I don't know anything about that stuff. But Vizzy, you were on par with what you were saying about Diaz going to LA. So maybe there is some credence to that. I don't know. But I don't really care what happens on in the background, man, right? Like, I'm pretty sure you don't either. Peter saying, I think Adam Ottavino comment about how Mendoza handles the bullpen probably what pushed Diaz too. There was also talks about, and I failed to mention this, Alexis Diaz, who was only with the Dodgers for 9 games, mentioned how great the Dodgers took care of their players and how, the structure was there in LA and how that worked for them. So that's a part of it. And also the fact that Edwin Diaz didn't like that maybe Jeremy Hefner was let go, but I'm not a fan of Jeremy Hefner. I thought he was a mediocre pitching coach, and you got mediocre results from this team. Ethan saying Stearns ultimately screwed up. You treat Soto like a king, having him over to Cohen's house twice. The least you can do is pamper your home guys a bit. Yeah. And that's how, like you mentioned, that's how they got Soto. I don't know how much a lot of people saying that Stearns wasn't a part of the whole Soto negotiations. It was all the Cohens. And here's an example and a reason why. Jeff Cohen saying Diaz wasn't on the team. What obligation did the Mets have? Obviously, the Mets don't have any obligation. But you would think after having the long-term relationship that the Mets and Edwin Diaz had, that maybe there'd be some sense of communication about it. They don't have to. I agree with you. They don't have the obligation. But just in my mind, if, we are close friends working on something, I think we would want to have a little bit of communication on that. That's just me. I'm not saying you're wrong, and they're right, I think both are right, honestly. Carlos Ramos saying Stearns doesn't even communicate with Diaz about the Williams signing. Talk to him and let him know you're signing a setup guy for him. Use it as incentive to re-sign with us. And he thinks Stearns is an idiot. There you go. Peter saying, I think Stearns want to start from scratch, which is, I think, the biggest thing is Stearns wants his own team in here. And there was all this talk, right? All this talk about breaking up the core of this team. And who are you going to get rid of? Who's the people? Well, Edwin Diaz is gone. And so is Brandon Nimmo. And, you know, it's quite possible that Pete Alonso is next on that. Ethan saying bad side manners matter, and the Mets messed up badly. You want guys to feel welcome. Then you tell Edwin, yo, we want to sign Williams. We would love for you to come back and team up with him. See, like, I don't think that's wrong either. I think you are right on there. I think both are correct. It's just a matter of opinion at this point. Diaz being upset about not knowing about Williams shows that the Mets weren't in constant contact with him. Malpractice by Stearns from Rosie K. Andrew Manassian saying then Stearns should trade Lindor as well. That's going to be a hard contract to trade. And I said that about Brandon Nimmo, but I think this one's going to be a little bit harder. Because I don't think Lindor is going to spend his whole career at shortstop. Still got a long-term deal. We'll see what happens, but I don't think Lindor is going anywhere, right? Like Lindor and Soto, that's going to be the guys that are leading this team. Ethan saying you probably made Diaz feel like he is being replaced already. That could be a part of it. And I know that a lot of fans say that these players are soft, but because they're soft, you should know to have to do this then. Right? That becomes the problem. G Money Stack saying even if you get another closer, it won't replace the 144 saves, which is tied with John Franco. The other closers are not Edwin Diaz. They aren't. They absolutely aren't. And we'll see if Devin Williams can be successful. We'll see what happens. I really want this team to do well, but it really is a frustrating day. Jeremy Berman saying, I was remembering a little while ago how Cohen made Diaz and Nimmo and Soto how much they were wanted. But in the current negotiations, they seem too detached from Diaz and Alonso. Now, is Cohen a part of these negotiations like he was with Soto and in the past? I don't know how much a part of the negotiations he is now. Maybe David Stearns is handling all these, these other deals. And when Steve Cohen decides to jump in, he will. Steve Cohen has the ultimate say at the end of the day. And maybe Steve Cohen also was like, okay, I'm okay with letting him go. Ethan saying, I have zero faith Stearns will leave the meetings with anything to help us out. I don't know if they leave with anything either, but my prediction is correct. And I said this on the last episode that there will be finality in what goes on with Edwin Diaz, whether that he signs with the Mets or signed elsewhere, or even if the Mets pick up a reliever. And here we go. Edwin Diaz signs with the Dodgers. Maureen saying Diaz should have been first priority for Stearns. I agree. Robert Uribe saying the agony of defeat there. Ethan saying if Stearns wants to build this roster his way, just go in front of the media and tell us, the fans, you want to rebuild, which I agree with. Be honest. I 100% agree. I prefer him to be more honest that they are making these changes. Peter also saying, I think Stearns wants to tear it down, which I'm not shocked about. Ethan saying you're wasting Juan Soto and Lindor and doing them a huge disservice. More so Lindor. Juan Soto's still, 25, 26? Well, he's got 5 years here. Who knows? Maybe he opts out if things don't go right. Carlos Ramos saying, imagine if Steve Cohen signed a GM for the Mets. You would think he would communicate with Stearns and let him know he is signing a GM. Edwin Diaz would have appreciated the same communication. You're not wrong there. Catherine saying that the Mets almost did not make it in 2024. Yeah, we talked about this earlier. The Mets were lucky to get in 2024 with that miracle run that they had, and they almost failed to make the postseason. They almost got swept by the Braves in those final 2 games of the season. So it wasn't like it was a great season. They went on this miracle run thanks in part to Lindor and the pitching and Alonso hitting the home run in the wild card game. But it wasn't all sunshines and rainbows for David Stearns. Peter with a great point here, saying, I'm going to say this, Beatty and Alvarez need to step up. I agree. And I think Carlos Mendoza and David Stearns mentioned how big of a part that Brett Beatty is going to be, being that third baseman there. And it's going to be huge for Francisco Alvarez as well. He's got to stay healthy and not get hit in the hand so much, because I feel like all season last year he got hit in the hand. But Brett Beatty, if he could produce like he did in the second half last season, and he can play the great defense that he did at third base and play a little second base when Simeon needs a day off, I think we'll be okay with him playing third base. Ethan saying people keep bringing up he brought the Mets to 2 games away from the World Series in 2024. That team was poorly constructed and got hot at the right time. It got exposed very quickly against the Dodgers team. Yeah, he definitely did. And I'm pretty sure no one's going to let him live that down. David Smith, Mets paid Juan Soto $765 million for 15 years, but are nickel and diming all of the rest of their players. How does that make sense in any universe? I don't know. Some people would even say that maybe the Mets feel jilted because Soto's making that much money. Rosie K saying, how can this team make the playoffs, Ant? Will they even be able to beat the Marlins? I don't know, man. The Marlins, they finished in 3rd place. I think they won 79 games last year. They're up and coming. It just depends on if they keep their pitching, right? They got Sandy Alcantara. Edward Cabrera has been in talks over this winter meetings about being traded. The Baltimore Orioles were being talked about as well in this. So he could be traded, but they got Yuri Perez. That's going to be a good team. And I don't know why Washington wants to trade their pieces either. They give the Mets fits all the time. And they got some solid people like Mackenzie Gore's on the trade block. I think CJ Abrams is. Like, why? Peter's saying we can't sign a pitcher over the age of 30. I don't know why he doesn't want to do that. And if he does, it's a short-term deal. There's talks about Michael King being linked to the Mets, but do we really want another 2, 3, 4 type pitcher who has an injury history and can't give us innings? We need it. If you're not going to give me a frontline starter, can you give me someone that's going to eat innings at least? That's why I loved the 2015 rotation. Yeah, it was a whole bunch of kids. But who was the anchor of that rotation? Bartolo Colon. Why? Because he could give you innings. I need an innings eater. David Smith saying Steve Cohen content building casinos and not winning baseball team. I haven't really been paying that much attention to this whole casino thing, but I mean, he's going to have a lot of time to be doing that. I don't know what that takes away from him building this team, but that is something that's going to happen soon, and we'll see where Steve Cohen's focus is. Jeremy Berman saying the moves Stearns made before the 2024 season worked out pretty well. He made similar moves in 2025 and they didn't at all. They needed a different approach. Otherwise, they may be worse than last season. That's the thing. I was okay in 2024 when they made those moves. But in 2025, they had to change their view because they got so close. But they went about it the same way. And lightning doesn't always strike twice. Zig saying players are leaving because they favor Soto 14 years, but only want to give them 3 or 4 years. So disrespectful. I mean, Soto would have went to some other team for 14, 15 years, but I could see if they're upset about it, but it shouldn't be. They should be happy because Soto set a precedent for these players to get more money and more years. A lot of talk in the chat about Pete Alonso not coming back. So let's take this into a different direction here. And we're going to talk about this whole thing. Kyle Schwarber re-signing with Philly and what that means for Pete Alonso here. Schwarber signed 5 years, $150 million to re-sign with the Philadelphia Phillies. Now he doesn't have Diaz to strike him out every at bat in the 9th inning because Edwin Diaz basically owned him. And now he could torture the Mets as much as possible. But what does this mean for Pete Alonso? And I know that the Mets were in on Kyle Schwarber. I don't know how much in they were, but they weren't going to give him 5 years. And Kyle Schwarber only makes sense if you're bringing in another at bat because he's a lefty, and that lineup is very lefty laden. He's only going to be DHing, so he kind of cripples you there. But what does this mean for Pete Alonso? Mark Feinsand said that the sticking point between the Mets and Alonso could very well be years, as sources say that the Mets may be hesitant to go more than 3 years with the first baseman. Like you guys in the chat, I just have a feeling that Pete's not coming back. I don't have a good feeling about this, especially after today. But watch him sign. But right now, it doesn't look good. Pete's going to want 3 or 4 years. He could probably easily get 3 years from some other team. So if the Mets are not going to give him 3 years, or if they're going to give him 3 years and lowball him with the prices that, that how Edwin Diaz goes to the Dodgers for 3 years and $3 million more, maybe that's something that happens here. Either way, the Mets still need 2 at-bats. They need 2 bats. Whether one of them is Pete or not, they need 2 bats. One of them needs to be in the outfield, and the other one's got to be at first base. Unless they do 2 outfielders and then throw McNeil and Mauricio and Vientos at first base. They got to figure this out. This is too much work for David Stearns to do this offseason. In a team that has no excuse and should not be collapsing again. It's very disappointing. Going back to some of you guys' chat here on the whole situation with Diaz as well as Pete Alonso. Carlos Ramos saying Steve Cohen, Buck Showalter, and Epler had made the New York Mets a destination in MLB. David Stearns has made the Mets a place players want to leave and avoid. Interesting. I always liked Buck Showalter. I felt like he got a raw deal, especially after the Mets traded everyone off. He still got that team with Jonathan Ruiz and Rafael Ortega and a whole bunch of no-names to play 500. Like, if they would have held on to Scherzer and Verlander, they probably would have been in the playoffs. Diaz is really good friends with Kike Hernandez, Vizzy is saying. So maybe Kike is going to just return to the Dodgers. I kind of wanted him on the Mets, but there you go. Maybe he won't be on the Mets now. Catherine saying nothing even with addressing the starting pitching. I know. They need a frontline starter. I know it's only December 9th, but man, you got to make us feel somewhat good leaving these winter meetings. Pan try saying, I'm positive that Stearns thought the bats would carry the team through 2025, even if the pitching was lackluster, then found out this core couldn't be relied on. Too sloppy and inconsistent. I 100% agree with this. They were way too inconsistent offensively. Could not come up in the clutch, except for the two players that we traded were the most clutch on the team. And I don't even think that David Stearns thought this pitching was going to be as bad as it was. I mean, they weren't getting through 4 or 5 innings for weeks. For weeks. Clay Holmes was our best pitcher this season. Carlos saying Citi Field should be empty. It's the only way Cohen will receive the message. They're just not going to. Like, I know we talk about this. The Mets fans won't do that. It's not like Grant's Tomb where they got rid of Tom Seaver. Like, if they would have traded Juan Soto or even Francisco Lindor, maybe I could see something like that happening, but I don't think that's going to happen. And who knows? Maybe I wonder if the ticket prices went up. I don't know if anyone's a season ticket holder, but I wonder if the ticket prices went up. Rosie K will get into Marte in just a few moments. Jay Ortiz saying, I'm not a Stearns fan. You and a lot of other people. Maureen saying, a lot of Met fans boycotted the Mets after the Seaver trade. They didn't come back until new ownership, which, yes, but I think this is a different situation. And none of those guys that are on this team right now are half the player that Tom Seaver was for this franchise. Eddie saying, when you let players go to free agency and start out with a weak offer, this is the result. Your first offer might be your last. If they started at $375, should have been the floor given Toronto and Los Angeles, both of whom wanted to add a closer. Yeah. I mean, if you want the guy, get it done. Let's stop the fiddle faddling and get the player that you want. Diaz saw Stearns isn't going to build a winner and got out. I don't blame him because I would too. David Stearns might genuinely be a detriment. I said this earlier. That's a winning team right now, and they have an opportunity to be a dynasty. Who wouldn't jump aboard that? And how many save opportunities is Edwin Diaz going to get with this Mets team if they can't get to him? Not many. We'll see how many save opportunities Devin Williams gets. Because if the starting pitching is not good and you can't get to the middle relief, he ain't going to be closing out that many games. Carlos Ramos going, imagine knowing your lineup needs serious help and you consider bringing back Starling Marte. That's how David Stearns works. We'll get to that also a little bit later on in the show. Jeremy Berman saying, before they signed Diaz to his previous contract, Cohen made sure Diaz knew he was wanted. Why not this time? I assume maybe because he's a couple years, and I'm just assuming. So don't hurt the messenger. I'm assuming it's because he's a couple years older. I don't know if the WBC has anything to do with it, him playing in the WBC. And the fact that relievers are Jekyll and Hyde every other year. As much as Devin Williams was bad last season, he was great the few years prior. Same thing with Edwin Diaz. But because he's a little bit older, he's a year older than Devin Williams. But there are also other guys who the Mets could probably get on the cheap because that's, maybe how they're rolling right now. Andre saying, I'm sorry, I think I have been saying Andrew this whole time. I'm sorry, Andre. He goes, if Pete leaves, they should seriously consider trading Lindor and building around Soto. I don't know if they can trade Lindor, though. I don't know if that contract is tradable. Everyone thought that Nimmo's contract was untradeable. I feel like this one, it's too long and too much money for them to trade them. I do agree with Catherine. This is exhausting. It is exhausting being a fan of this team and exhausting being there for these winter meetings. The winter meetings are finally stuff has happened today, but man, to get these teams to do things, to get baseball players to sign when you're watching in the NBA or the NHL and how quickly players go to teams and sign. This is the slog of an offseason when it comes to baseball. Eddie Presley saying, I like your background. Yeah, it's a lot of Funko Pops back here. I used to collect a whole bunch of them, and we finally put them in wall units. And I also need more screens, so I need this version. Otherwise, I do have my Mets memorabilia, which maybe I'll switch back and forth every so often. But this side helps me with the multiple screen view, so I appreciate that. JRT saying, I'm not surprised because this is who Stearns is. In my opinion, we just lost one of the best closers in baseball. We lost the best closer in baseball. Just a little correction. We lost the best closer in baseball. And I do love know what happened to Steve Cohen stated at the onset. Yeah, it's crazy. Carlos Ramos saying we're not seeing World Series rings with David Stearns in control. Matt Talks Rangers saying, personally, I'm waiting till the end of the offseason to make any final assessment. Losing Diaz sucks, but you can still find a way to build a good team without him. It will be harder, but it's possible. And I think you can build a good bullpen still without Edwin Diaz. I mentioned the names. Robert Suarez is out there. Pete Fairbanks is out there. There are names out there that you can get. Tyler Rogers, you should probably think about bringing back. I know he's another year older, but Kenley Jansen's out there. There are names. He doesn't have to close. I mean, and people complain because he's a Yankee, but Luke Weaver was a good reliever for a while. There are names to add here. Sir Anthony Dominguez from the World Series or the American League champion Toronto Blue Jays. There are moves to make. Oliver Garrett saying, look at the Dallas Mavericks. Right now, that team is messed up. That franchise is gone. Guys, Nico Harrison messed up. I don't watch NBA as much, but I did kind of tune into what was going on with the Mavericks, and I hope that does not happen here in Queens. We will see, but that's a team that even made it to the playoffs so many times. I mean, the Mets are a team that can't consistently get to the playoffs. Rosie Kang saying, I love baseball too, but the Mets are lost. They are lost right now, and they got to figure it out. Shout out to my guy Edge in the chat. Appreciate you, my friend. Hope you are doing well. JRT saying Stearns is destroying this team little by little. We are losing good players. Nimmo being one of them. Matt Talks Rangers saying Stearns must find a way. The more moves he makes, the more the team becomes his, and the excuses lessen. 100% agree with that. Rosie Kane saying if they are rebuilding, they should just say that. I mean, if they were rebuilding like 100%, like you mentioned here, Diaz is Lindor's also gone. They figure out a way to get rid of Soto, and they just let the kids play. Wandering Wolf trying to throw the Robert Suarez signing with the Dodgers, just joking. Joking for now, but I wouldn't be shocked if they bring him in. They are not wasting any time. They're going to try to win as many championships as they can. Well, there's only one left that they can do before the lockout happens, and we all are pretty sure that that's going to happen. Matt Talks Rangers saying, go get Robert Suarez and trade for Trevor McGill. With Diaz gone, you have to make the bullpen as deep as possible now. Thing is, who are you going to trade for Trevor McGill? Are you okay trading prospects for him? Where there are some, like, I would definitely bring in Robert Suarez because he's a free agent. Maybe Tyler Rogers or some of the names that I mentioned. But, maybe Trevor McGill is the way to go. Then who would be the closer then? Because Trevor McGill's the closer in Milwaukee. Is that something that would be an issue with him and Devin Williams? I don't know. Ethan saying you can't keep running this same strategy. You need proven guys. This works in a small market, but you need to be bolder here in New York City. Stearns is going to do him, and that is building this team this way until he gets it done right so that he can say, yes, I did it this way. You guys all disagreed with me, but look, in the end, I got it done right. That's all. It's kind of like Brian Cashman, who's going to continue to do things his way until it gets done that way, and he can, laud it and applaud it and rub it in your face. Beer saying Mets will never, ever win a World Series again. You heard it here first. Breaking news per source. The failure to sign Diaz is about deeper issues with the Mets. Something is rotten in that team. Eddie Presti saying Tyler Rogers to the Mets is a no-brainer. I wouldn't mind adding his brother too, but I think we have too many lefties in the bullpen. There's never enough lefties, Eddie, especially with these guys getting hurt all the time. We have never had two consistent lefties in the bullpen since, 2020 maybe, 2019? Bring them all. If it makes this team deep, and if he's good enough, I'll take him. Jeff Cohen on the Devin Williams train saying Williams got his bad year out of the way. I sure hope so. Ethan saying Stearns runs this through the spreadsheet. He doesn't care about emotion. You are just numbers to him. That's how most of these guys are doing their business now. It's all about the numbers. It's all about the statistics. It's all about the computer. If you've seen Moneyball, that's the way the world is working now, unfortunately. In baseball, the human element has been taken away. Ethan saying he is the same guy who told Nimmo they want to trade him while Brandon is celebrating his daughter's birthday. Yeah, I thought that was kind of messed up, man. They shouldn't have done that. Carlos saying, even if Pete comes back, that's not improvement. That's literally breaking even. It's still the same from last season, just without Diaz. But they need the two bats, right? Let's say Pete doesn't come back. Okay, who are you bringing in to be the two run producers in this lineup? Kyle Tucker? I don't see them giving him a contract. Cody Bellinger? Do you want another Yankee guy who now can't hit outside of Yankee Stadium? I don't know. Edge saying he's full of crap. It's up to him to distribute those resources, and he hasn't done that. Yeah. He hasn't done that to what was the term that he said? He hasn't allocated those resources intelligently. Straight from the horse's mouth himself. Matt saying, my only question with Stearns is, what are the players is he's willing to go long-term for who aren't Soto? I understand being smart with offering contracts, but sometimes you have to be uncomfortable. And we just haven't seen that from him yet. Who else is he going to offer a long-term deal to? Is it smart to offer Cody Bellinger a long-term deal? Because that's what he wants. He wants somewhere in 6 or 7 range. That's why it's going to take so long to sign him. Kyle Tucker is going to want, 8-9 years? Who is Stearns willing? We know that he's not going to give it to any pitcher unless they're 25 years old like Yamamoto was. Peter saying, I think Stearns not willing to give out years is going to be a problem. Absolutely. It really eliminates half of the free agents when you do that. Because now you're in the bargain bin and in the dollar aisle, and you're getting these players that are just status quo. Edge saying, knowing the other teams like the Dodgers are looking for pen help, you have to make your next offer, Edwin. You have to make your next offer, Edwin felt away. Yeah, he definitely did. And the fact that the Dodgers are not done yet and are thinking about Robert Suarez tells you all about how they operate. Tells you exactly how they operate. Raptors Nation in a good mood, feeling great about his Dodgers stealing the Mets players. So congratulations to you, my friend, because you got one of the better ones out there, for sure. One of the best closers in baseball right now. Wandering Wolf thinks Alonso's going to sign with the Giants. Cal Tucker's going to sign with the Yankees. Bo Bichette's going to sign with the Red Sox. And, Schwarber's already staying with Philly. And Alex Bregman signs with the Cubs. That's interesting. And the Mets get nobody. All right. I want to get to the next topic here before we continue here. And that is David Peterson. Also now being talked about. Is there a trade incoming with David Peterson? Tim Britton and Will Salmon of The Athletic said that David Peterson is generating interest according to league sources. The Mets are open to moving the 2025 All-Star if they could find the right fit in a need-for-need type trade, kind of like the Brandon Nimmo Marcus Semien trade. He's entering his final season of team control, projected to make $7.6 million in arbitration. Last season, he was 9-6 with a 4.22 ERA. But in his last 8 starts, he had an 8.83 ERA. And after coming back from the hip surgery, he had a 3.67 ERA. Remember that run he went on when he came back from that hip surgery, went all the way through up to the point where he had that complete game shutout last season, and he kind of fell apart here. They're saying that it could open up a spot for a front-end starter, but if the Mets aren't willing to trade prospects and they aren't willing to spend money, and if they're not willing to give years, it's going to be hard to get a frontline starter. And it's hard to trade someone who's giving you length in games. He was one of the only pitchers to go over 6 or 7 innings. And now you want to trade him? It's enough that this team has a hard time scoring. And as Wandering Wolf put it, the Mets have lost 10 wins above replacement if Alonso leaves. And they've lost more with even Brandon Nimmo. So the things that they need, they're taking away. Shout out to Armand in the chat. He's saying if the 2024 Mets did not make the playoffs, Stearns would have traded Nimmo and Diaz. Alonso would not have been brought back. I think that the Mets making the 2024 postseason was the biggest detriment to what David Stearns wanted to do to this team, because then he had to invest more in a team that he didn't want to invest in. He wanted this to be a slow build to where it's all of his guys. And he had to fast track that because the team not only made it to the postseason, but had the run that they did. And then he felt like he had to bring back Sean Manaea. He had to make all these moves that ended up not working and cost the team dearly last season. Not to mention the awful trade deadline, which I thought on paper was a good trade deadline. It was just awful and did not work out. FNP thinks that Pete Alonso will sign next week. I mean, he's meeting with teams, right? Meet with Boston and the Orioles so far. David Stearns saying that he doesn't have to meet with the Mets now is very concerning to me because of what happened with Edwin Diaz. Ricky, diehard sports fan, saying Dodgers about to get that three-peat unless they get hit with multiple injuries at the same time. They're so deep that even with the injuries, I feel like they'll still look at. They had no bullpen, right? Tanner Scott wasn't even good. He wasn't even closing by the time they got to the World Series. Maureen saying Candelita saved the 2024 Mets. Him, along with the coaching of JD Martinez, I think helped that team as well. Armand saying the one thing I've learned from today is that Stearns needs to get better at communication. Absolutely. Absolutely. Communication with his own players, for goodness sakes. Rosie K saying if the Mets are a win-now team, they can't rely on Beatty and Alvarez. The Mets lineup as it's currently constructed is not going to win many games. That's why I said they need at least 2 more bats. OTC 69 saying the back-to-back champion Dodgers. Congratulations. It might be back-to-back-to-back. It might have a three-peat on your hands. Radiant saying why the Mets always be Metsing. Gonna have a heart attack at 18. Hopefully not. This is only the beginning. I'm letting you know right now. If you're a young Mets fan, this is only the beginning. Let's see. Rosie K saying Stearns focused on his chemistry experiment rotation. Well, now he's got these young kids coming up. And obviously, Nolan McLean is probably a lock for the rotation. Hopefully, he stays healthy and pitches well again. Sproat, not too much. Tong needs more seasoning down in AAA. But I assume the rotation is going to be McLean so far. It's going to be Peterson, Senga, Clay Holmes. Who am I missing of this rotation? Manaya. That's the rotation as it is right now. And if those guys can't stay healthy, oh boy. Andre thinks that Pete's going to definitely get 5 years and that Stearns not going to. Well, Stearns definitely not going to give him 5 years. They're going to move on from that. Michael Gentili saying Mets will have to at least go 4 to keep Pete. I don't even know if they're willing to do that. I don't even think they're willing to get to 3. I think 3 is the tops that they'll go. And he may just go to the Red Sox. Nolan LGM saying, I hope Pete leaves. Bottom line is this loser core never won anything. Nimmo is gone, and hopefully Pete and McNeil are next to go. I don't understand all the irrational attachment to these players. Radiant saying, ask yourself this, except for Juan, almost $1 billion contract Soto, what big name came here with Stearns? I don't think anyone likes him, and I'm not trying to be mean. A lot of people don't think that he was involved with the whole process with getting Soto here. So it is what it is. All right. One more thing before we start wrapping up this show, and I appreciate we got 500 people, man. Shout out to all of you in the chat. I can't thank you guys enough for being a part of this show. This has been a solid show, and we're almost at 1 a.m. in the morning, and you guys are hanging out with me here. Maybe some West Coast, maybe some Dodgers fans in the chat as well. The Mets were talking about bringing someone back. I don't know if it's going to be someone that you like. Starling Marte, possible reunion. Pat Ragazzo of SI.com saying there's been mutual interest from the Mets and Starling Marte to bring him back. The idea is that Marte could fit as a bench piece who can serve as part-time DH and backup outfielder, which is the same role he's doing right now. Obviously, you talk about the relationship with Juan Soto and what Soto said about him being the captain of the team last season, 270 batting average, 9 homers, 34 RBIs, and 7 stolen bases. I really don't want Starling Marte back. I just don't. I love Juan Soto. Grateful that he's on this team. But just like we shouldn't be basing our signings on what the fan base wants, shouldn't be basing it on what Juan Soto wants either. He's got enough things, right? Like, Cohen's taking care of him. Like, it's time to move on. I agree with Peter. Soto needs to get over this Marte thing. It's time to move on. I don't even know if I want him on the bench. You're telling me there's no one else we can get on the bench that will give us a little bit more? Like, he's very limited when it comes to playing on the outfield. He can only play so much. He's been injury prone and doesn't play a full season, even if he's coming off the bench. I just don't know. I'm ready to move on from him as well. Thank you, Ricky, diehard sports fan. I appreciate you for saying the kind words about the channel. Make sure you like the video. You want to subscribe and to tune into more Mets content. We're bringing you that. The next show, outside of there being some big signing, the next Subway to Shea will probably be Sunday at 10 a.m. Talk about, the QBC. We'll wrap up everything on and put a bow on these MLB winter meetings and see what happens, see what the Mets' plans are moving forward. But I think even Ken Rosenthal were saying that the Mets were, I can't remember the phrase that he used, something about the Mets not knowing what their next move is. I got to bring up that tweet because that was very telling to me of what Ken Rosenthal said. If I could find it, it was during Foul Territory today that he mentioned about the Mets' plans moving forward, and it wasn't very positive. I definitely thought it wasn't a positive look. Yeah, here he goes. The Mets are curious right now. They don't seem to be that heavy on anybody. That is definitely a fun way, post losing Edwin Diaz, to look at things. Now, I hope they come, it's still December 9th. I get it. But man, this team, like I said, needs 2 batters, needs a frontline starter, needs some relief pitching. They need an outfielder and a first baseman. They don't seem to be that heavy on anybody. This is going to be a very, very long offseason. Very long. Very, very, very long and frustrating. But all we can do as Met fans is hang in there. We can come on here. We can chat. We can talk about it and do our best at trying to put a smile on each other's face because, man, the Mets haven't been doing that for a while now. One last thing before I wrap up the show. MLB draft lottery happened, and the Mets get the 27th overall pick in the draft. And as Anthony DeComo put it, the Mets once again had their top selection docked 10 spots as penalty for exceeding the second CBT threshold, which is why they're picking so low. So if anyone wants to call Steve Cohen the coupons or the Wilpons, that is far from it. For this reason, the Mets are spending, and they're losing draft picks for spending so much because of the luxury tax. It's not about spending. It's about how they allocate that spending, as David Stearns mentioned, intelligently, which hasn't been done that much. Chris Wilson saying, go Dodgers. Congratulations if you're a Dodgers fan on getting Edwin Diaz. I ain't going to be hating on the Dodgers. Best team in baseball. They're doing everything the right way. They're the best team in baseball, only trying to get better and trying to win more World Series. Can't hate on that because that's what I wish our team was doing right now, and they just aren't. But that wraps it up for this edition of the Subway to Shea podcast. Please, if you enjoyed the content, if you're new to the channel, like the video, subscribe to the channel, help me out. There'll be more Mets content coming. Even if you're not a Mets fan and you want to bash the Mets, I don't care. Be a part of the chat. Let's have some fun. If you know me, all opinions are welcome. Whatever it is, it is. We're here to have a good time. We're here to have some fun. Follow Subway to Shea on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Subway to Shea. You can follow me on X at AntRivera86. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I will post this once this show is over. But if you want to be a part of the chat and you want to be a part of the conversation, you are doing that right here on YouTube. Some people can be tuning in from X as well, and being in the chat, but YouTube is the place to be. And you can support the Subway to Shea podcast with super chats, super stickers, and super thanks. Thank you, everyone, for being a part of this show. Appreciate you. All have a good night, because get some sleep. Don't let this team frustrate you too much, because we're here for a lot more frustration every day of the week. Don't let the Mets do it to you. Enjoy your night. Have a good night. Have a good rest of your week. And if you're going to be at the QBC, I hope to see you there on Saturday. For Anthony Rivera, this has been the Subway to Shea podcast. And always remember, let's go Mets.